Hello internet friends, my name is Bay. Welcome to the Legion Beta second pass look at the Fire Mage. This is the only ranged spec that I can say with some confidence that I have played for some amount of time other than just testing here during Legion. I do have a little Fire Mage ult that I played a little bit back in last expansion, and then quite a bit more as like a regular ult that like actually did something, dungeons and LFR and some stuff other than that in Warlords. So I've played Fire Mage, right? And I enjoy it. And people ask me all the time, like, Bay, what are your favorite specs in Legion? And I'm like, Enhancement Shaman, duh, because reasons, right? And then Fire Mage is good for a ranged class, then Unholy DK, and then Retribution Paladin. But Fire Mage has received some, I would say, substantial like quality of life changes, and I think I like them. People have been back and forth while testing. The VOD is linked below, the notes are linked below, the bug report is linked below, all those little things in the video description box below. Go check that out if you want more information. I gathered that it was like, they liked it, but they were like, you know, it's okay. It's kind of like how Elemental Shaman has some quality of life changes, but people are like, it's okay. But I'm not that negative towards these changes. I really think the new changes towards Ignite make a lot of sense. The new changes toward Hot Streak and Heating Up, I think, makes total sense. I like the new Combustion. Many people think it's not that good. I think it's a lot of fun and a whole lot more impactful on your gameplay if you use it properly. Whereas Combustion, and it's gone through so many damn iterations over the past, like, 3 expansions in a row, if not more, of course, it always feels like the one on Warlords right now feels like you're a Warlock. Like, it's all about, like, dot damage nonsense, and, like, that's a Warlock thing, is dots. Yeah, you light things on fire, you're a Fire Mage. I get that. But it should be about, like, bursty, RNG, huge damaging spells with some dot damage. Whereas Combustion now is so much cooler. Or not. You're the freaking, like, Avatar from Legend of Korra. It's so good. It's so good. So let's go over the basic spellbook here real quick, and then we'll show off some spell effects, then we'll go over all of the artifact stuff, then we'll go over some talents, as we normally would. Those orbs of fire above your head are from the Felo'melorn, very reminiscent of Kael'thas's, the little orbs that float above them, but they go away. They like suck into your brain when you take off Felo'melorn. They just kind of disappear in that regard. But alright then, let's show off some stuff here real quick. So you have Molten Armor as a passive, which increases your spell critical strike chance by 15%, and reduces all physical damage you take by 6%. That does bring your, like, armor up a little above 20%, like, physical damage reduction or so, which is not bad considering you are a clothy. And your critical strike chance by default is 5%, plus the 15, and plus whatever I have here on gear, which is 6.35% chance. So stat-wise for the Fire Mage, we have written down here that you're probably still going to go in crit overall, which crit stacking now, you don't lose anything for crit stacking. Then mastery, then haste, and then lastly versatility. Hot Streak, getting 2 direct damage critical strikes in a row will make your next Pyroblast or Flame Strike spell instant cast and cause double the normal ignite damage. And to go to your mastery now, Ignite is your target will burn for an additional percentage amount over 9 seconds of total direct damage caused by Fireball. Inferno Blast, which is now it's renamed, it's just Fire Blast now. Like, it's just Fire Blast. There's a couple of tooltip errors in the build still that are not saying it's called Fire Blast now, but that's what it is. Scorch, Pyroblast, and Flame Strike, and many other abilities as well. The updates whenever you change your talents around, or when like you have Phoenix Flames, for example, from your artifact, that counts as a Pyroblast technically. So more or less any direct damage spell you have causes Ignite, except Dragon's Breath. So, and any remaining damage will be added to the new Ignite. You know how Ignite rolls forward if you play a Fire Mage. Basically, if there is damage to be added into that 9-second window that was still ticking down, it just adds into that new value. So just keep stacking up to a degree, but behind the scenes, there will be plateaus where the damage will just fall off behind. So, and then every 2 seconds, your Ignite may spread to another nearby enemy. It says may spread, it does spread. It will always, always, always spread. I know, right? This mount. So what happens, though, is that your new Ignite... Got some frame errors there. Hello? Storm Shield? Storm Shield? Hello? What is happening? Okay. So the way Ignite works is that you will see the effect on the target dummy, of course. The fire Ignite effect will happen. You'll have Ignite going over here. But if you have Ignite down here on other... Watch the numbers. It'll slowly, like, creep around. And if you add more Ignite damage to a target, it'll just actively jump around and keep updating the other Ignites that are in the area. But it ticks once a second for 9 seconds, and every 2 seconds, the little bit on there that says it may spread means that if there's a target within 8 yards, it'll spread to it. That's like how it works, is that it may spread. That means it needs to like have an ad or an enemy nearby to actually spread to it, but it will always spread. It's just the wording is that it's a little bit confusing. Enhanced Pyrotechnics is that each time your fireball fails to critically strike a target, only fireball, it gains a stacking 10% increased critical strike chance. Effect ends when fireball critically strikes. So this is just insurance for your fireball to actually crit eventually. The target dummies down here are currently bugged where a lot of the spell effects don't work on them. I currently have Unstable Magic talented, just so nothing else like interferes really. And you get to see the new fire particle effects from on that's what I'm testing. So that's why you see the spell effects like get eaten into nothingness, where if I attack this guy up here, the actual spell effects do land naturally. So I don't know why it's like that for some reason. It's just a little bit strange that that happens. But the new fire graphic particles are fantastic. They are very, 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 very pretty. And the one thing you need to see, of course, why I had to talk about the your hot streaks change. Let me go change real quick here. Let me get another crit. Here, it should be one right there. No? Oh, 4 stacks. Cheeky. There we go. It is Flame Strike. Oh, it's such a pretty spell. It's so pretty. The new Flame Strike is finally a strike of flame. Oh, duh. So nice. It gets even better with talents, too. It's really, really, really good. You also have Critical Mass. So this multiplies the critical strike chance of your Fireball, Pyroblast, and Scorch by 1.3. This means that your actual critical strike chance on your paper doll is just your global crit chance. But for Fireball, Pyro, and Scorch, you need to take this 26.35 times 1.3 to get your actual critical strike chance on those spells. So more crit modifiers, of course, and as you have crits from your spells, you get bigger mastery, and your hot streak spells deal double mastery ignite, double the dot component here. So it'll be doing 25% damage on a hot streak that mostly will apply to your Flame Strike and your Pyroblast, of course. Other things can, of course, crit, but your hot streak only, of course, applies to Pyro and Flame Strike, and maybe other abilities we'll get into more later. So that is that. You still have Time Warp, of course. Still have all your teleports. Still have all of your portals. Right? Still have Polymorph. Still have Slow Fall. Still have Invisibility. Baseline. Arcane Mages get greater invisibility. And you are untargetable by enemies. Lasts for 20 seconds. Taking a action cancels the effect. 5-minute cooldown. And you still have Spell Steal. Spell Steal chunks your mana. It will just destroy your mana. So, but it's a huge utility spell, of course, in that regard. So you can steal a beneficial magic effect from a target. The effect lasts a maximum of 2 minutes. You have Ice Block baseline as well. 5-minute cooldown on Ice Block causes 30 seconds of hypothermia. It's a 10-second immunity to everything. But of course, you cannot attack, move, or cast spells. You can click it off again or have a cancel or a macro to break the Ice Block early. It costs 15 mana, oddly. It's just like, I don't know if that's like an inside joke or something like that, but like 15 mana is like, what? Still have Ice Barrier. This is your only actual DR, is a damage reduction. It is just a personal powered shield. It absorbs an amount equal to a percentage of your spell power. When the shield holds, spell casting will not be interrupted by taking damage. And you also have Frost Nova baseline. Again, these target dummies don't animate properly, so you don't actually see the Frost Nova effect on them. I can go show that off a little later, I think. But Frost Nova, 12-yard AoE around you, light frost damage, and it freezes them in place for 8 seconds. Damage may interrupt the freeze effect. And you still have Counterspell, of course. 24-second cooldown. Counters the enemy spellcaster, preventing any spell from that school from the magic being cast for 6 seconds. No mana cost. Conjure Refreshment by default will give you food. If you are in a group, however, it'll automatically turn into the refreshment table. Makes mana pudding. That mana pudding, though. We'll have a little bit of bite of that real quick. And of course, blink. The blink glyph that meant you could blink in a direction that you were currently strafing or walking is gone. That we could not find out that if it was actually in the game anymore. So I liked the blink glyph that would, like, I could strafe, right? And then blink to the left. Now you have to actually angle your character to blink that direction. Oh gosh. So 15-second cooldown, 20 yard until reaching an obstacle, and frees you from all stuns and bonds. But yeah, it's still weird that you don't have that. I missed that glyph. I think I'm going to miss it as an alt playing. I do like you could strafe things. You could strafe the fire or whatever nonsense on Archimond, right? You just strafe and you blink. But now if you blink, you're going to blink forward, not to the side. So I hope we bring that back because it was a minor glyph, but people can't find it. It could still be in the game. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below if it's still in the game or not, but we did not see it when we were looking on the server anyway, on the glyph vendor, which it could just not be there. So DPS-wise, Fireball, bread and butter. No mana cost, basically. 2.13 second cast time right now based on my haste. I have a little bit of haste. And it does a 30,000-ish fire damage. Just your main filler spell. Honestly, it is definitely the filler spell for the Fire Mage. You spend a lot of your time, once you work on the artifact and talents, that you're not really casting Fireball all that often. It is how you start the rotation, how you fill the rotation, but it's definitely not all the rotation is anymore. Just because of how the RNG works with some talents and other spells and abilities. Fire Blast now. Fire Blast, which was Inferno Blast before, there's no more of that weird, like, spreading dot AoE nonsense anymore. Is a cooldown reduced by haste, to give you some haste synergy, where you blast for some fire damage. The damage will always be a critical strike, unaffected by the global cooldown, and castable while casting. So if you watch me cast fireballs here real quick, you still kind of, like, end a cast with a Inferno Blast, see? With a Fire Blast, but you're not going to use it too early. I still think, because Hot Streak and Heating Up now only have one stack to one stack, right? You can only have one. And then this, there's no extra stack anymore. There's no, like, third stack that you can, like, cook a Hot Streak proc, for example. But I still think every time you do build up a Hot Streak, you're still going to have a Fireball into a Pyroblast. I think that's what's still going to be a thing. You're not going to just immediately cast that Pyro on the global. You're going to build up this Hot Streak. You're going to Fireball again into a Pyroblast. Because if either of those crit, you go right back into this string where you do it again. So you Fireball into a Pyroblast. Or you Fireball into a thing here, right? And then you Fireball into a Pyroblast. And that's a talent that just procced right there. We'll go into more of those later, of course. Same thing on that one again. It's Pyromaniac doing things. So it's... But you cast it. See, if I'm casting a Pyroblast, you can still just Fire Blast as you're casting. So, oh gosh. Pyromaniac, please, calm down. But I don't know if that's correct, but I know if you're casting a Fireball and you get one stack of Hot Streak, which may or may not happen right now. Like, if you get this, you're not going to go immediately into that. You're going to wait, and you're going to build it back up again, and then cast another Fireball into a Pyro, I think. I could be wrong there, but that's what feels the best, because if the Pyro or then the Fireball crit, you're going to go right back into a Hot Streak. And it just keeps the rotation going in that regard. So I think that's what you're going to want to do, because you kind of, like, stack two crits on one place. You've seen Dragon Breath a couple of times here. Dragon's Breath is a 20-second cooldown. Does some frontal cone AoE damage. By default, it is a 12-yard frontal 90-degree cone, apparently. And it's a 4-second disorient. Damage may cancel the effect from Dragon's Breath. But, like, if I stand right here at these, like, here's, like, 5 yards. Where's 5? That's 5 yards. Right? That's 5 yards of melee. So if I step back to about here, it's like about 10 yards or so, right? So it still definitely hits in that 10-yard radius. So these archers are like 12 yards away. So if I stand like in this guy's crossbow and do another Dragon's Breath, what you notice about it is that the graphic for it does not actually extend to the full radius. And it gets worse with the artifact, and there's actually a legendary that extends the range of Dragon's Breath by another 25 yards, apparently. So it's gonna look weird that you just, like, Dragon's Breath nothing, and, like, the invisible space that has no graphic will still do damage to people and things. So hopefully they'll address this and upgrade the graphic to actually, like, extend the radius a little bit more. It looks fantastic. The new Dragon's Breath is great, but they need to fix that, I think. Flame Strike has a super long cast time. You're not going to ever cast this manually. You're going to use your hot streaks to do it. Call that a pillar of flame, burning all enemies within the area for an amount of fire damage and reducing their movement speed by 50% for 8 seconds. Scorch is still your on-the-move cast. So Scorch is a very short cast time, can cast while moving, does very light fire damage, but has the same. It has the critical strike stuff. So if you do get some extra crits on the move, you can get... Oh, I messed that one up. You can still gain your hot streak procs, so do something on the move. And then Pyro Blurst, which is you hurl a immense fiery boulder that causes a ton of fire damage. Again, a very, very long cast time. You usually open with fights with this, like a hard cast of Pyroblast as like the pull timer's going down. But that gets a little bit more complicated with some of the rotational stuff later on with talents, so more on that later. But whenever you get Hot Strike, you Pyroblast, or you use your Hot Strikes on Flame Strikes. Either one of those, totally acceptable based on the situation at hand. And then lastly, you have Combustion, your only baseline DPS ability, cooldown-wise. So 2-minute cooldown, quite a bit of mana, actually. It's like 10%. And you engulf yourself in flames for 10 seconds, increasing your critical strike chance by 100%. That means you will go over the cap. And then granting you mastery equal to your critical strike stat. Not your chance, but your stat. So right now, if I hit Combustion, which is unaffected by the global cooldown and castable while casting, which is interesting because you can actually combust while spells are in the air, and they will then guaranteed crit and do additional damage based on the mastery gain. Right now I have 6.35% critical strike from the stat. That's what gets added to my mastery. But what happens is that everything will crit during Combustion. So you do gain the ability to have some serious chains. I mean, I barely did it right there because I was looking at the tooltip, right? But when it comes back around, we will definitely show that off a little bit more. But the huge bonus comes in with Combustion is that you have crit scaling forever. Because the more crit you have in Combustion, the more then mastery you have. And remember, your Pyroblast always gains double benefit from your mastery because it's being always cast during Hot Streak. So there's a huge component where crit just like never stops being bad, or it's never is bad, never stops being good. Never stops being good for the Fire Mage, which is the whole point, because you need to have crits to really push the whole spec forward because of the RNG nature of crits and how fire works and how fire works. 4th of July jokes. How that works forward. And that's Pyromaniac going off crazy again there. But it's very similar to how you play on live right now, but there's no more of like the getting to 3-stack nonsense. That's gone. But that's the basic spellbook here. I'm familiar to go over on that one, so let's pop back on Felo'melorn. Felo'melorn! And we will go over all of the artifact stuff. People keep asking me about the artifact macro to open this up, so I'm going to keep showing myself in every video. You can take a screenshot of this and use it when the game comes out live. This is /run space socket inventory item open parentheses 16 close parentheses semicolon. That will open up the artifact instead of going into your character sheet and then shift right clicking. That's how I open it up so fast always in these videos. So I start right here with Phoenix Flames. Gone through some interactions recently with Phoenix Flames. It has definitely changed a little bit since it first came out. But you hurl a Phoenix that causes fire damage to the target and then a little bit of splash damage to other nearby enemies, 8 yards. And then the damage is always a critical strike. 45-second recharge, 40-yard range. So this is actually, the spell effect is very fast, so get your eyeballs ready to go. There's 1. There's 2. There's a Pyroblast. And then here's 1 more at this guy so you can see a little farther away here. Right there. Yeah. But you do throw a actual Phoenix of Fire out of your fireball spell there. it kind of like spawns really far away. Like you throw it and then it spawns like 20 yards away from you and then it like swoops up and hits the target. But because it deals guaranteed critical strikes, and it ignites as well, of course, because it counts as like a pyroblast for purposes of ignite, that it is sort of used in the rotation to do the same thing that Fire Blast does. But because it has a longer cooldown, that it's sort of a little more like rotational in a way. You never want to ever have 3 stacks unless you're like waiting to do a burst phase, for example. But, or your opener, your opener, which I'll do the opener on the video and it's hilarious. You never want to have 3 stacks unless you're waiting to burn. So you always want to kind of use one and have one always recharging. Because you'll want to have the option that if you want to burst something down, you have more crits on demand to proc your Pyroblast. It does less damage than Pyroblast, but it has a little bit of extra AoE component, of course, in that. So you never want to just have it on cooldown, because you want to have it available for you to help you out. However, the big thing to take in mind here is that how Fire Blast works, right? If I have a hot streak right now heating up, and I can Fire Blast on that spell to gain the hot streak, and then I can go back to Fireball on this. This has a travel time. You cannot use Phoenix Flames the same way. So if you actually want to use Phoenix Flames to gain a charge of Pyro, you need to actually use it on the heating up effect. Because if you utilize it with a Fireball back to back, it will actually land after the Fireball-ish. And then you'll lose your heating up. Let's see if I can do this right now. I'll show you. So right now, if I immediately go with it, see, it doesn't work. I lost, because that first Fireball does not crit, or didn't crit, for example, and I lost the other stack of it. So rotationally, where you would normally like clip a Fireball with a Fire Blast and then use a Fireball into a Pyroblast, normally you kind of have to like just use the Phoenix Flames naturally, and then you can cast a Fireball into a Pyroblast, for example. But there's a little different differentiation in those abilities right there, just so you are aware that it's not the exact same effect as a Fire Blast, even though it does guarantee to crit. So there you start right here. You go over to Wings of Flame. Increases your fire damage dealt by 5%. All right. You have Blue Flame Special, 15% Flame Strike damage. All right. Scorched Earth, 5% stacking movement speed up to 5 stacks whenever you cast Scorch. So this is that's not Scorch, Adam. What are you doing? So Scorch gives you a stacking sprint. So there's 1 stack, there's 2 stacks, 3 stacks, 4 stacks, and 5. So Scorch is definitely going to be useful. It might be a thing in Rage to stack it up a couple times and like keep it up for certain like mobility fights. It may be a thing. I don't think so exactly, but it's not bad. It's going to be one of the very, very last artifact perks you're going to go for anyway. But having a 25% sprint is not bad. You can't shake a stick at that. That's not too bad. Cauterizing Blink is so good. Activating Blink will heal you for 15% of your maximum health over 6 seconds. So just bloop, and you heal for 15% of your HP. On every blink. That's a lot of sustain. A lot of sustain. Pyroclasmic Paranoia is 6% more damage dealt by your Pyroblast. Burning Gaze is 3% critical strike damage for your fire spells. So it increases fire critical damage. That means that all of your crits now are 203. Your fire crits are 203% damage. So not really a huge thing, but it's just more crit synergy, I guess. More crit scaling. Fire at Will reduces the cast time of Fireball by 9%. So it's just 9% free haste on your Fireball spell, which your Fireball is really, really filler oriented. So that's not too bad. Reignition Overdrive is 24% damage done by Inferno Blast, aka Fire Blast, just a tooltip error. Blast Furnace is that Fire Blast deals additional amount of damage over 9 seconds. This does not stack, just a little small dot that pops up here. It does Pandemic to 12 seconds. But also the little tooltip here is like a Demon Hunter's like sigil effect, which it should not be that. So I put that as a bug report that it should be like the actual little Inferno guy, Blast Furnace guy or something. That's not your spell. Molten Skin is Molten Armor reduces all physical damage you take by an additional 10%. So now Molten Armor is at 16% physical damage reduction. That's a huge bump up, because you've got 16% baseline and then 16% more for Molten Armor passive. So you're at, not effectively, but in that multiplicative realm, 32% physical armor reduction. There are AoEs and effects in the game that are straight up physical damage AoEs. And with only like a, you know, a little 2,000-ish ice barrier, my gear is bad. Obviously, it's going to get stronger and stronger like, as you gain more and more spell power. That's your only DR. That's not bad. Mostly a huge PvP thing, because then you won't get as trucked by physical damage dealers once they figure out PvP and get it balanced. Ugh. Great Balls of Fire. I know. Increases the damage dealt by Fireball by 9%. Big Mouth is the range on Dragon's Breath is 3 yards, 3 yards larger, or longer, whatever it is. So right here, see what I mean? Like I know the air around the Dragon's Breath is hot, and you know, it pushes the heat outwards, but it's just kind of awkward that that AoE effect is just not better, like, shown, that it's a wider arc. So I don't know. It just hits from so far away and it's awkward, but not bad. Ever Burning Consumption is 12% more damage dealt by your Ignite. This currently does not reflect on the tooltip whatsoever, and I'm going to assume it is a multiplicative bonus on the actual Ignite damage. So like right now it's going to be like 1%-ish or something more, right? It's free mastery, but it's like a mastery scaling buff because it's not additive, right? It could be, but if it is, why isn't it updated in the tooltip? I have no idea. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. You can let me know in the comments below how this does stack, but I'm assuming it's just 12% more of your mastery benefit towards Ignite. So right now it's like not even 2% more, but that's still a lot when it stacks up and stacks up and stacks up and stacks up per spell that crits, right? So that's not too bad, but it's just kind of like Elemental Shaman had something like this too with their Elemental Overload, where like it didn't affect the tooltip, so you didn't actually know like how much it affected it, and it was like 4% more. You were like, okay. So, all right. So the path you're going to be leveling up your artifact, what I was told, and we talked about this for a while, you're going to start off here with Phoenix Reborn. Targets affected by your Ignite, any target, has a chance to erupt in flame, taking additional fire damage instantly, and then reducing the remaining cooldown on Phoenix Flames by 10 seconds. There's no really way to like look for this, because it just kind of happens. But if you look down at it may happen not right now, I don't know. It's just there it goes right there. It's just an RPPM chance on anything that actually is burning by your Ignite to suddenly take off 10 seconds on your Phoenix Flame cooldown, just to give you more Phoenix Flames. So unless you make like a weak aura for this to like show you like a boop, like it pops up, like it shows you that you get 10 seconds off, there's really no way for you to like notice it other than the fact that like, oh, I've got my Phoenix Flames up sooner than I thought. But that's a lot of extra synergy because Phoenix Flames is guaranteed crits, extra Pyroblast charges, etc., even some extra cleave damage. It's super good during combustion. So yeah. Next up we have Pyretic Incantation. Pyretic is like to induce fever, like to induce a fever, or a fever-inducing something is a pyretic something. I don't know, whatever. It's a fever-inducing incantation. Each consecutive critical strike you deal increases the critical strike damage you deal by 25%. This stacks to 5 times. Doesn't say it on tooltip. It should. And has a very short buff timer. Yeah, it only lasts for 6 seconds. But every time you crit consecutively, once you stop critting, you saw that Pyroblast didn't crit, it falls off immediately. So Pyretic Incantation, by default, just buffs combustion. And the more spells you can cast during combustion, the more critical strike damage all of those spells will be doing. And you get 3% more from Burning Gaze, so technically at max stacks, you've got 28% critical strike damage on your fire spells. Which is why one of the best like openers for combustion utilizes lots of fire blasts and immediately, like on the global really quickly, to gain this buff up really fast to give you that 5 stacks immediately to amplify your damage even higher. And lastly, you saw it right there, it's called Aftershocks. As if Flame Strikes calls down 1 additional pillar of fire each time it's cast. This effect is actually called Aftershocks, right there in the combat log. And it does like 16% of the damage from the Flame Strike. So the Flame Strike hit for 45,000 base, and it hit for like 7,200 is the Aftershock. It's just an extra bonus on AoE. I'm not sure how it stacks with Blue Flame Special. I think because the Aftershock effect is a percentage based off the actual Flame Strike, then this bonuses, this helps out the base damage, right? But like the path you're going to take is going to go Wings of Flame, down around the corner here to Phoenix Reborn. You're going to go back up here to Blink, go around the corner here to Pyretic Incantation. You're going to then grab Burning Gaze and then grab Aftershocks. Grab Molten Skin and Reignition Overdrive and Blast Furnace, and then you'll probably grab Blue Flame Special and Scorched Earth last. So that's going to be your path. It's really straightforward based on all the feedback we gained during the live stream. So that makes the most sense for me as a Fire Mage. Pretty straightforward stuff. But quite a number of things come from the artifact for the Fire Mage that really kind of set it on fire. I know. That's going to be the thing at the end of the video. If you want to know what I'm going to ask you to do in the comments section, it's your worst like fire, blaze, hot, scorching, comment. So get those ready while you're watching the rest of this video. Get them ready, because that's going to be I can't wait. And again, to update you all, this is the Paragoning ability. This little extra golden dragon perk is only available to unlock after you're 34 of 34. This costs a ton of artifact power. It gives you 5% increase all damage, and it stacks to 20 of 20. The other 19 levels will give you the other 10% of damage dealt. So you get 5% immediately, and then it takes you 19 Paragon points to give you the 15% damage done. Recently, this was changed. It was like 0.5 damage done each Paragon point. So they've changed it now to be a much better bonus early and then just a scaling system later on. But still, that's a lot of artifact power. We did the math on this. 1.6 million artifact power is 31% of an entire artifact from start. So people always ask about like, well, if I'm going to be, going crazy hard on my certain artifact, like how am I going to level my other ones? Like how do I split my artifact power onto my other artifacts? And that's going to be up to you, because as a pure DPS caster, you may want to have a Frost and Fire, or a Fire and Arcane, or a Frost and an Arcane spec. And going super hard on one and putting all this artifact power to get the Paragoning point early will take away, as I said, 31% of 34 perks on your other artifact. So you can get a ton of it from the same amount of artifact power. This is supposed to be a end game progression mechanic throughout the entirety of Legion, not something you just go crazy focused on and only grind for it. You could, like as I play on Enhancement Shaman, I may never really care about playing Restore Elemental. So I might just put all of my artifact power into that perk. I'll probably get 1 point into it to the 5% margin, and then I'll care about my other artifacts, and I'll power them up over the course of the expansion a little bit here and there. But as like an endgame raider that wants to min-max their character, super important. But for pure DPSs, you have a much harder choice on, or a much harder grind to make that work for you. All right, talent time. That's when stuff gets a little bit interesting. So I've had Pyromaniac on this whole time, which is that casting a Pyroblast or Flame Strike while Hot Streak is active has an 8% chance to instantly activate Hot Streak. So it's basically Divine Purpose for Pyroblast and Flame Strike. And it's 8%, which is super low. That's why it happens sometimes and it feels amazing, but it doesn't it really ever happens in succession. So you really can't count on it exactly. It may be amazing sometimes, but it may also never proc. So it's not reliable. It's fun. In my VOD of Fire Mage testing, I got a 4 stack and I inked really hard. because just four pyros in a row was hilarious. But that's why I wonder where Pyromaniac's gonna lie, because it's kind of like, it's good, but it's also not consistent. So you have Conflagration next up, which is that Fireball will also cause Conflagration to the target, which gives you back the Fireball dot, basically. And it deals additional fire damage over 8 seconds, and enemies affected by either your Conflag or Ignite have a 10% chance to flare up and deal additional fire damage in an AoE around. So that's the little crits you see, the pop-off damage. And it actually does animate the little Conflag effect on the target when it actually does proc. But Conflagration is always going to be active. It's consistent. It's extra burst damage, and it makes your Ignite do more random damage too. Whereas Pyromaniac may give you 900 Pyroblasts over the course of an encounter, or 4. So math-wise, I'm not sure. Pyromaniac is fun, Conflagration is consistent, and Firestarter, Wicked Firestarter, is your Fireball spell will always critical strike a target above 85% health. So this is going to be a thing that's helpful on fights like Cenarius, for example, that actually has adds that spawn periodically during the fight, so you can actually gain more crit on those adds to then stack up higher ignites on them. And you don't have to use as many Fire Blasts because your Fireball will keep critting during that window of time right there and give you a little bit extra damage on those new adds. But Firestarter is not going to work really well on fights that don't have adds that are going to be a thing. I say Cenarius because on the Cenarius fight in Mythic Emerald Nightmare, for example, he summons new adds every so often, like a tree and a dragon and something else. And those adds have to be killed off immediately. You have to like focus them down, one of them. So every time he spawns a new add, Firestarter will give you guaranteed crits on that add. Whereas it could also be good on like the Heart of Il'gynoth because every tentacle that spawns is full health. But that also makes like Conflagration better because their tentacles usually close together. And this gives you more direct damage on those. So Firestarter is interesting. Could also be PvP oriented to give you more burst on players that are high health, but only on Fireball. So that's a trade-off. I think Conflag might be the best one early on, and then maybe Pyromaniac will be better later after you have more crit rating. So you actually activate Hot Streak more and more often, so you'll gain more free Pyros. I'm going to go over your 2 utility tiers next to get this out of the way. I have Cauterize right here. Same thing as on live. Fatal damage will instead bring you to 35% health and then burns you for 28% of your maximum health over 6 seconds. While burning, movement slowing effects are suppressed and your movement speed will be increased by 150%. That's the burning, what is it? Burning, not burning rush, but blazing speed. We got there. And the effect cannot occur more than once every 2 minutes. Shimmer is basically super blink. It still gets the blink heal from your artifact. But Shimmer is a 15-second recharge as well, 20 yards forward unless something is in your way, unaffected by the global cooldown, and castable while casting. So it's super blink because you can move, you can use it while you're actually casting spells. So you can blink while casting a spell. And of course, if you blink out of like your frontal cone, it breaks it. So there's that. But it also gives you 2 stacks as well. So you have multiple blinks as more mobility. I kind of feel like depending on how you play or what the fight calls for, Shimmer is super good. And then Cold Snap gives you 2 charges of Ice Block, and you also will heal for 3% of your max health every 1 second. So coupling that with your heal from Blink, though, you have a pretty substantial amount of healing you can put out on yourself. So, because the Cold Snap will heal you for 30%, and your Blink heals you for 15%, so you can, like, oh no, I'm so low on HP, and you blink, and then you Ice Block, and then you get a ton of healing. It's not bad. It's 45% of your max HP. In 10 seconds, of course. Because you gotta remain in the entire Ice Block to make that happen. But that's could be helpful for PvP. Obviously, Cold Snap is beneficial. You can't back-to-back because hypothermia. But and also in a raid setting, you might need this for extra survivability. You might want extra Ice Blocks because you might need to block multiple things in a row or just have it up more often. And there might not be a movement thing. Cauterize is good for progression because you might like oopsie-daisy something, and this will save your life. Whereas Cold Snap is obviously before you do this, right? It's a proactive thing. You also have Ice Flows, which is just the same thing you've always had. you can cast it, and you can cast a spell while moving. And you can cast it while you're moving as well, so you can keep your movement going on. Let me get that. Thank you very much, Ice Flows. Ridiculous. But I don't think the Ice Flows bug is in the game anymore, where you could Ice Flows as you Ice Flowed with the spell going off to, like, not make the stack go away. But I'm also not... I never, like, did that bug at all, so... I don't know. But it's your move while casting. You have 10 seconds whenever you put up a charge of Ice Flows, which makes you cast while moving. Unaffected by the global cooldown, and castable while casting, max 3 charges. But it's only shorter than 10 seconds, so you can't, like, move and cast portals, for example. But every other spell you can move and cast, just not portals and weird stuff like that. Ring of Frost is still here, of course, where Ring of Frost just puts down a Ring of Frost that lasts for 10 seconds, and at the target location, enemies that enter the ring are incapacitated for 10 seconds. Actually, let me go over to the to a mob, because the spell graphics do not load, which is so ridiculous that the spell graphics don't load right now. So, River Beast, walk through the thing. There it is. You know it. And then, of course, you can break it with damage. And then you can put him in a whop. There you go. Fire Mage is, like, so mobile. They have so many, like ways to kill things while questing. So, obviously, I used all my Phoenix Flames there to kill one mob. But still. Ring of Frost. So, Ice Flows is personal movement and spell casting, whereas Ring of Frost is obviously going to help your raid out with CC if needed. And then Ice Ward just gives you 2 charges of Frost Nova. Could be better for leveling and maybe for PvP. Not sure. But those are your 2 utilitiers. Next up, we have Rune of Power. I'll hold for the groans. Oh, I hear them. They're so loud. Just let it out. Rune of Power is different now. It's different and better, maybe? So Rune of Power is a very short cast time, 1.5 reduced by haste, 45-second recharge, 2 charges. You place a Rune of Power on the ground for 10 seconds, which increases all spell damage you deal by 50% while you're within 8 yards of the rune, 2 charges. It's really powerful. 50% damage for 10 seconds. 2 charges. Combustion also lasts for 10 seconds. I'm going to jump ahead real quick to Flame On. Flame On gives you 2 charges immediately of Fire Blast on a 40-second cooldown. So this and this is really powerful. I'm going to see if I can actually do the opener real quick here. And what I feel like it's weird, the better opener is actually to have a charge of heating up when you do this. But there's also one where you can cast a Pyroblast first. But I kind of like just to do this. So I'm going to cast Rune. As Rune finishes casting, I'm going to hit Combustion. I'm going to hit 2 Fire Blasts back to back to get an instant Fireball going, or instant Pyroblast going, which will then crit. I will then use a Phoenix Flames to go back to 2. I will then use my Flare, my Flame On to give me 2 charges back again. So you'll see how fast this happens all within the Rune of Power window. If I don't mess it up. There's that. There's that. There's Flame On. There's this again. There's that again. This again. I mean, you'll have 1 left, and you can put the Rune of Power down, and you can use that again right there. So that's like the opener, or the burst window. And again, during Rune of Power, because it only lasts for so long, you might not want to, like, add another Fireball into the spell, but you want to get that Pyroblast off immediately, though. So, but that's like the fun opener. But you see what I mean? Like, you're not casting a lot of Fireballs that often, depending on the rotation. But that's just because of Rune of Power and Flame On and Combustion. So, because you're trying to utilize as many crits in a row to stack up Pyretic Incantation to give you more critical strike damage on those spells that will guarantee to crit during Combustion. And because you're utilizing and throwing in so many... I mean, what was my Ignite ticking for there? My Ignite was going off for... Well, it was falling off there. 13,000, not too bad. 14K, not bad. No, 24,000 during the thick of it. Yeah, 25,000. 34, never mind. We got 34,000. Oh, 47,000 Ignite. 53,000 ignite. There we go. Yeah, the highest tick was 53k. So that's just ignite. So yeah, it's not too bad. I mean, you got 377k crit pyroblasts, but very bursty, very fun, very Fire Mage feeling where you're just like unloading all of these molten all over the place. But that is where the Rune of Power comes into play. Mirror Images is still here, where you create 3 copies of yourself, basically, which have a 2-minute cooldown that lasts for 40 seconds. What I looked at for math-wise is that these guys, or girls, or ladies, they hit for basically, let me look back at the game real quick here. They actually don't do, like, insignificant damage. I mean, they last for 40 seconds, and they will, of course, change targets if they need to. If you attack something else, they will change targets eventually. Hello? Ladies? Ladies? There we go. Or not. Or... They want to, but they can't. Okay. But they do about 20,000 damage. And your fireball that you throw does 40,000. So it's kind of like between the 3 of them for 40 seconds, they're doing 1.5 times-ish your fireball damage. And they just cast it forever. So it is a single target DPS increase, but again, I guess because they're not working properly. They were the other day. They changed targets for me. I don't know. Maybe they didn't. But it's just a easier cooldown. It gives you like a direct, like, here's a cooldown right now. And you can couple it with your own combustion, but I just wonder if Mirror Images will be more damage than Rune of Power nonsense, because you're going to have more Rune of Powers over the duration of 1 Mirror Image. You're going to have 3. And then over the course of the fight, you're going to have 6 for 2. So, but again, Rune of Power is like more like skill cappy, so that's up to you. Incanter's Flow is still just the same thing. So it goes from 4% damage to 20% damage, and it goes up and down every 10 seconds. So you go from 4, it goes 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, and it hovers at 20 for a little bit, and then it goes all the way back down to 4. It hovers at 4 for a little bit. Just a passive damage amplification. Math on that, I was told it averages out to be about just a flat 10% damage increase over the course of like an entire raid. So it's not too bad, but it's not that great because you can't make it funny with Rune of Power. So Rune of Power might still be too strong. Controlled Burn. This is a weird one. Controlled Burn is when you gain heating up, which is the first step. This one right here. You have a 10% chance to instantly activate Hot Streak. So this combined with Pyromaniac means that you could get more of those strings together. I was told that Control Burn is a lot better when you have higher crit, but then so is Pyromaniac. So you might start out with not using Pyromaniac and Control Burn and maybe they get better later on. But it's kind of like, it's just not going to happen that often. It's just like, okay. But they're both just random, so you can't really ever like bank on them, but it might depend on gearing. It might be hilariously fun because you could technically fire a fireball, which goes into a pyroblast, which then procs pyroblast and procs pyroblast and procs pyroblast. And then you could fireblast after that and gain a controlled burn to go right back into pyroblast. But it's just not consistent. It's just super rare. 10% chance is just nothing to like hope for, I guess. But we'll see. We'll see how gear works out in the very end. And then over here in the corner, we have Blast Wave, which is super fun. Blast Wave is just a targeted explosion at a target or enemy or ally, causing initial fire damage with an 8-yard radius, reducing movement speed by 70% for 4 seconds. And the primary enemy will take double damage. 25-second cooldown. It's actual burst AoE. It's also a little bit of utility as well because it does have that 70% snare, which is a huge snare. I mean, you're crawling. Flame Strike's only a 50% snare, but Blast Wave is a 70% snare. So good for extra kiting. I like Flame On the most myself because so much power. Wow. So much power is in the combustion window and Rune of Power nonsense, and Flame On is just like right there. So I'm not sure where these stack up. Again, I don't play Mage at a super high level, so I could be wrong here. But I imagine Flame On might be the better talent to take for almost every situation. It also gives you more AoE. So when this comes back off cooldown, we'll move on to the AoE rotation here, because your level 90 talents are basically all AoE spells. So let me put this down here and put this down here. All right, let me grab Conflag. So I've had unstable magic on this whole time, which is Fireball. Only Fireball has a 25% chance to explode on impact, dealing 50% additional damage to the target and all other enemies within 8 yards. This is a additional effect. It does not ignite. It is called unstable magic. It does not have any other coefficient onto it itself. It just is a proc if it ever wants to proc. Now that I want it to proc, it's not going to. Thank you, game. I love it. I want some more of it. I hit ice block accidentally. I'm upset. Come on. What are you doing? There it goes. Anyway. But that's like your only single target DPS talent. Honestly. Because you have Living Bomb is over here, which exists, and it's not bad, but Living Bomb is like Kael'thas's bomb in Here's the Storm. So it's a cooldown reduced by haste, just a GCD, doesn't cost anything else really. And it's a short dot, and then after the dot explodes, so it deals additional fire damage over 4 seconds, reduced by haste, and then explodes to deal additional fire damage to all targets and all other enemies, the target and all enemies within 10 yards. And then other enemies hit by the explosion will also become living bombs, but this effect cannot spread further. So these two now are living bombs, and they'll blow up. The weird problem with living bomb is that it's very GCD intensive. So we think living bomb, or we think during the streaming we talking about it, is that it's very much for... It's not really for burst AoE in the same way that Flame Patch is. It's kind of like for like rotational, like constant cleave damage. It obviously would spread to like every Scorpion and all blow up for ridiculous amounts of damage. But the thing is, you're sacrificing globals to make Living Bomb work because it's just a short cooldown. Whereas your other option here is Flame Patch. Now, Flame Patch is interesting. This is that Flame Strike leaves behind a patch of flame which burns enemies within its area for 35,000 fire damage over 8 seconds. These stack. These stack. You can have... I had like 5 or 4 or 5 at one point in time. It's RNG oriented. But so look about AoE, right? Look about burst AoE. So we've got Conflagration here, which means that our ignites will do extra damage and AoE around them. Rune of Power for more actual damage in 10 seconds. Flame On for more instant charges of Fire Blast. Flame Patch now for your Flame Strikes will do basically just more damage. So now, if you look at AoE in this sense, what if you just do this? What if you are AoEing, or you're prepping for AoE, right? And you've got a Hot Streak. Now you can do this nonsense. Whoops, I messed it up. I did mess it up. I used one less spell. Ah, crap. You can basically put down... I use Combustion there as well for just added effect. But you can... essentially... I think I had a Pyroblast in there somewhere. You can stack these flame patches while you're also throwing in crit Phoenix Flames, always, because they always crit anyway. And throwing in maybe a Fireball or 2, which will also crit during Combustion or not, which will stack the Conflag buff, and all your Ignites, of course, have the extra damage component, but all during your Rune of Power. I mean, normally you can do this too. You can just go Rune of Power into this. You can go bam, bam, and then do this again, and bam, bam, do it again, and go bam. So that's 2 Flame Patches, 2 Flame Strikes back and forth, and remember, you've also got the Aftershocks effect as well. So the burst damage potential and then Flame Patch, which we thought was like kind of bad at first, but we didn't know it could stack. All of those will stack on the same place. And because they all get amplified by Rune of Power and multiple Flame Strikes in the same place. So if you have Flame On and 2 charges of Fire Blast and 2 charges of Phoenix Flames, that's 3 Flame Patches stacked on top of each other. That's 6 Flame Strikes because of the Aftershocks effect. And you've got Conflag going off going crazy. Doing extra AoE damage as well. So, again, I'll do it again real quick here for you. The Phoenix Flame slows it down a little bit because you have to, like, cast the spell. But, I mean, look at the AoE damage happening right here. There are so many things happening every 1 second that it is a ton of fire damage. Lastly, you have Kindling, which is your Fireball, Pyroblast, and Fire Blast critical strikes reduce the remaining cooldown of combustion by 1 second. Fantastic overall, helps you give more combustions off with Rune of Power. Every Phoenix Flame, because it counts as Pyroblast, and every Fire Blast always crits. So as you rotate them throughout the rotation normally, and when you use Flame On to gain more charges, you're just going to reduce the cooldown on your combustion even more. And combustion is just a huge source of your damage. Meteor is here as well. Meteor is... It's a PvP ability. Because it is another burst effect. So it meteors, and it's called Meteor, right? 4-second cooldown, where you call down a meteor like Sephiroth with the target location after 3 seconds, dealing initial fire damage, and then it's splits evenly among all targets within 8 yards, so it will evenly split the damage. So it's not really good for AoE because it gets diminished the more targets are in the AoE will be diminishing. And then it does a little flame patch on the ground as well, like Flame Patch does with Flame Strike. But Meteor is also just like, it's burst damage. It's single target bursty. Because you can then, like, Rune of Power this. Because you Rune of Power everything, right? You can wait for it to come back off cooldown. And you can Rune of Power Combustion Meteor. Boom. For 419,000 damage. It's almost better used as single target burst. So I don't know if that's how it's supposed to be used, and it has to have that meteor effect to make it not be another AoE tool. We've already seen you don't need any more AoE tools as a Fire Mage. We had Fire Mages during Mythic testing yesterday doing 800,000 DPS to Tichondrius because he has 3 little blood that spawn next to him. Or 6 when we were doing the whole, like, wait till 6 spawn, then burn them all down. And because you stack so much Ignite on Tichondrius, and that'll spread to all the different adds, and then I would assume Conflagration's going off there too if the Fire Mage is using it, all of those adds are blowing up, all the Fire Nova style, on all the other adds, and Tichondrius, and all of that is just stacking Ignite nonsense, and it's just blah, blah, blah. It's a fiery blender. So Meteor is like a burst single target thing, where it helps you have, like, right now extra damage instead of like just more dot damage for AoE. So that could be a thing. Next up you have Cinderstorm, which I don't... Let's see that one more time, shall we? It looks pretty. It's neat. But Cinderstorm is a cooldown reduced by haste, very short cast time, where you throw a spread of 6 cinders that travel in an arc from your right, dealing fire damage to enemies that it hits. Each cinder can hit 1 enemy once each. The damage will be increased by 30% if the target is affected by your Ignite. So it does, like, okay damage, I guess? But again, it's very rotational. It has no hot streak component at all. But it might be the only thing we talked about on stream that's like good for this is bosses with large hitboxes. So that all the cinders actually connect with the boss. And that it might, because of Meteor's long cooldown, it will equal to more damage than Meteor. But again, the problem with not taking Kindling is that Cinderstorm slows down the regular rotation, and it does not affect heating up or hot streak whatsoever. It's just kind of bursty. It does work with Pyretic Incantation, so if you use it at the tail end of your combustion, for example, after you have 5 stacks of it, then all of those crits from Cinderstorm will all have the 25% more critical strike damage, and they'll all guaranteed to crit. That's why it's like, it's not bad. It's just, if a boss's hitbox isn't big enough for all the cinders to, like, land, it's just a weird rotational ability where do you cast it on cooldown? Do you not? Do you use it when you're like, when you don't have a hot streak and you like about to put a fireball up, so you use Cinderstorm instead of Fireball? It's just like, I don't know how good this is. I just love Kindling. I love the Flame On Rune of Power nonsense. Until Magic, of course, just going pure single target nonsense. Of course, then you can just take Flame Patch for AoE, Controlled Burn, and Pyromaniac later on for additional nonsensical single target damage or AoE, depending on how this works. But that comes down to gearing. I only have like 26-ish% crit right now. So if you have more and more crit, like if you're at like 35% to 40% crit, maybe Control Burn Pyromaniac is like super good. But that is the Fire Mage. Outside of Cinderstorm and the awkwardness of Living Bomb now, I think there's really no bad choices. It looks really good. I love the new particle effects. It's really pretty. It's very flashy. It's very explosive. It's how it's supposed to be for a Fire Mage. It's very, very, very powerful, like, feeling when you have these crazy strings of nonsense going off here. But it is not up to me to decide if this is going to be, you know, how to spec this. That's up to you to decide. And let me know in the comments below what you think of the new Fire Mage. I said before, leave me, if you made it through the whole video, leave me your best or worst, oh, the puns, fire-based, heating up, blazing, ablaze, flame on references you can in the comments below. I await the face palms and amazing crisp high fives. Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed these previews. Look on the video description box. Testing, the bugs are down there, the notes are down there. Other ways to support my channel, all my social stuff is all down there below. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you all in the next Legion testing video.